My name is Evan Mercer, and for almost 3 years, I worked the overnight shift at a 24-hour Wendy's just outside Knoxville, Tennessee. It wasn't the kind of job anyone dreamed about as a kid, but it paid enough to keep me afloat while I figured out what I wanted to do with my life. Most nights were painfully predictable. Drunk college kids ordering fries at 1 a.m., exhausted truckers grabbing coffee at 3 a.m., and the occasional weird customer asking for something absurd like 12 packets of mayo and no burger. The night shift had its own rhythm. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead like trapped insects. The fryer hissed constantly. The smell of grease soaked into your clothes no matter how often you washed them. And after midnight, when the dining room closed, it was usually just me and my manager, Rick, running the drive-thru. That's why I noticed him. The first time, it was a Wednesday night around 2:15 a.m. A black sedan pulled up to the speaker. The windows were so darkly tinted that they looked painted over. I pressed the headset button. "Welcome to Wendy's. Go ahead whenever you're ready." There was a pause. Then a man's voice came through the speaker. Deep, calm, perfectly clear. "One Baconator combo. Large, Sprite, no ice." Simple enough. I entered it, told him the total, and the sedan rolled forward. When it reached the first window, the driver cracked the glass only an inch, just enough for a pale hand to slide out holding a debit card. No face, no words. I processed the payment, handed the card back, and watched the sedan creep toward the pickup window. Except it didn't stop. It just kept rolling, straight past the second window, past the dumpster enclosure, and out onto the empty road. I stood there holding his food bag like an idiot. Rick laughed when I told him. Probably stoned out of his mind. That seemed reasonable. We set the food aside. An hour later, Rick told me to eat it. Free Baconator, no complaints. A week later, it happened again. Same time, same black sedan, same order, same silent payment. And once again, the driver left without taking the food. That got my attention. By the third time, I knew it was deliberate. Same exact order, same exact car, always between 2 and 2:30 a.m., always paid in full, always abandoned. Rick thought it was hilarious. "You've got yourself a secret admirer," he joked. I laughed along with him, but something about it bothered me. It wasn't just the repetition, it was the precision. Whoever this guy was, he was making sure everything happened exactly the same way every time. Still, free food is free food, and when you're surviving on minimum wage, mystery burgers lose their creep factor pretty fast. So for about 3 weeks, I accepted my strange little routine. Every 4 or 5 nights, the black sedan would appear. The man would place the same order, pay, leave, and I'd eat dinner. Then came October 14th. I remember the date because everything changed after that. It was raining hard enough to blur the parking lot into a smear of yellow reflections. Rick had called out sick, so I was working alone. Around 2:08 a.m., the familiar crackle came through my headset. A car had pulled up. Even before he spoke, I knew it was him. One Baconator combo. Large, Sprite, no ice. I entered it automatically. Then, just as I was about to give him the total, he added, "How's your mother doing, Evan?" My stomach dropped. I froze. The headset felt too tight against my ears. I hadn't told him my name. There was no name tag on my uniform. Company policy had changed months earlier. And my mother, she'd been in the hospital that week, recovering from a minor surgery. I hadn't told anyone at work, not even Rick. For a moment, I genuinely thought maybe I'd misheard him. I pressed the button. "What?" The speaker crackled. Then the same calm voice repeated. "I asked how your mother is doing." I stared at the rain streaking down the drive-thru window. My mouth had gone completely dry. "Who is this?" No answer. "Hello?" Silence. Then I heard his engine rev. The sedan peeled away from the speaker and vanished back into the storm. He never came to the window, never paid, just left. I spent the rest of my shift barely functioning. Every shadow outside looked wrong. Every passing set of headlights made my pulse spike. By the time I clocked out at 4:30, I was exhausted and unnerved. I kept telling myself there had to be an explanation. Maybe someone from work had told me about my mom. Maybe this was some elaborate prank. Maybe Rick was messing with me. But deep down, I knew none of that made sense. The hospital was in another county. Hardly anyone even knew she was there. The 20-minute drive to my apartment felt endless. I checked my mirrors constantly. No black sedan, no headlights following me. Still, when I pulled up into my apartment complex, relief washed over me. Until I saw the envelope. It was taped to my front door. Plain white, no stamp, no name. Just there, waiting. I looked around the empty parking lot before peeling it off. Inside was a single folded sheet of notebook paper. Written in thick black marker were 6 words. You forgot what happened in Asheville. That was it. No signature, no explanation. Just that sentence. I stood there in the cold, staring at it. My hands started shaking. Because I had been to Asheville. 2 years ago, spring break, a weekend trip with college friends. And something had happened there. Something I hadn't thought about in a long time. Something I'd convinced myself wasn't important. I went inside, locked every bolt on the door, and sat on my couch staring at that note until sunrise. By morning, I'd convinced myself I was overreacting. The note could have been random. The drive-through thing could have been coincidence. But then my phone buzzed. Unknown number. A text message. Just one line. 3 days, Evan. Then we settle this. And beneath it, an address I recognized instantly. An abandoned motel on the outskirts of Knoxville. A place that had burned down years ago. That's when I realized this wasn't a prank. Whoever had been ordering those meals, whoever knew about Asheville, whoever had left that note, they weren't joking. And somehow, they believed I owned them something. The worst part, deep down, I was starting to remember exactly what happened in Asheville. And if my memory was right, they had every reason to come looking for me. By the time my shift ended at 4 in the morning, I was a wreck. Every little sound had my nerves firing. The buzz of the fryer timer made me jump. The static crackle from the drive-through speaker made my stomach twist. Every set of headlights that rolled through the parking lot had me bracing for that black sedan to appear. But it never did. When my manager, Carl, arrived for the morning shift, I told him everything. At first, he laughed. He thought I was screwing with him. That stopped the second I showed him the note and the photos I'd taken of the shattered glass all over my apartment floor. His face changed fast. He told me to go home, get some sleep, and said he'd pull the transaction records from the register later that day. I drove back to my apartment as the sun started rising, my hands gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles hurt. The parking lot outside my building was empty. Too empty. Normally, at least a few cars would be scattered around from the other tenants coming and going for early shifts. That morning, there was nothing except my rusted Honda and a black sedan parked directly beside it. The same one. I knew it instantly. The windows were pitch black. The engine was off, no lights, just sitting there like it had been waiting. I stopped my car in the middle of the lot. For a moment, I just scared. Then the driver's side door of the sedan slowly creaked open. A man stepped out. He was tall and thin, dressed in dark clothes that looked almost too formal for that hour. Black slacks, black coat, gloves. And his face. I recognized him immediately, even though I hadn't seen him in years. Evan? The name slipped out before I could stop it. He smiled. Not warmly, just enough to show he knew I'd recognized him. Evan Mercer had been my best friend in high school. For almost 4 years, we were inseparable, gaming together, skipping class together, pulling all-nighters, talking about all the ridiculous plans we had for life after graduation. Then senior year happened, and I ruined everything. I hadn't thought about him in years, hadn't wanted to. He leaned casually against the sedan. Good memory, Tommy. My chest tightened. What the hell is this? He tilted his head. You really don't remember? And suddenly I did. Senior year, the communications lab, final project presentations. Evan had built this campaign from scratch, something he'd spent months obsessing over. He wanted a scholarship to this private media school in Chicago. It meant everything to him. The night before presentations, I stayed late helping him finish editing his files. At least that's what everyone believed. The truth was uglier. I copied his entire presentation onto my flash drive, deleted his original project, and presented it as my own the next morning. I won. He didn't. When he tried to explain what happened, nobody believed him. The school board assumed he was making excuses. The scholarship committee withdrew consideration, and 3 weeks later, he dropped out. I told myself back then that it wasn't a huge deal, that we were kids, that he'd recover. I buried it under years of denial. Now, here he was, standing in front of me, smiling. I was 18, I said weakly. The words sounded pathetic the second they left my mouth. Evan laughed. That your defense? I was a stupid kid. You destroyed my life. The calmness in his voice was worse than if he'd shouted. I lost everything because of you. My mouth went dry. I'm sorry. Sorry? He pushed himself off the car and started walking toward me, slowly, measured. I spent 6 years rebuilding my life, Thomas. Each step made my pulse hammer harder. 6 years working dead-end jobs. 6 years watching everyone else move forward. 6 years wondering if you even remembered what you did. He stopped a few feet from my car. Then he smiled again. But now I know. I fumbled for my phone. I'm calling the police. Go ahead. I looked down. No signal. Impossible. I'd always had reception here. Evan held up a small device in his gloved hand. A signal jammer. My stomach dropped. What do you want? He leaned closer to the window. His voice lowered. I wanted you scared. He glanced towards my apartment. I wanted you to feel what helplessness feels like. Then he reached into his coat. I flinched. But instead of a weapon, he pulled out a flash drive. He dropped it on my passenger seat through the cracked window. What is this? Proof. I stared at it. The original project files, timestamps, metadata, emails. He smiled. I kept everything. My blood ran cold. You're blackmailing me? No. He straightened. I already sent copies to your employer, your landlord, and every social media account linked to your name. I felt like the air had been sucked out of my lungs. What? By noon, everyone will know exactly who you are. He stepped back. This was never about money, Tommy. Then he got back into the sedan. Before closing the door, he looked at me one last time. Oh, and one more thing. He pointed towards my apartment building. Check your bedroom. Then he shut the door. The sedan roared to life and peeled out of the lot. For several seconds, I just sat frozen. Then panic overtook. I sprinted upstairs to my apartment. The front door was unlocked. I knew I'd locked it. My hands shook so badly I nearly dropped my keys. I pushed inside. Everything looked normal. Too normal. Then I walked into the bedroom and stopped cold. Mounted directly above my bed was a small camera, its red recording light blinking steadily. Beneath it, taped to the wall, was another note. Now we're even. I ripped the camera down and staggered backwards. That's when my phone finally buzzed. Signal restored. Notifications flooded in. Dozens. Texts, missed calls, emails, social media alerts exploding all at once. The first message was from Carl. "Don't come back. Corporate cult. What the hell did you do?" The second was from my landlord. "You need to vacate by end of week." Then came dozens more. People I hadn't spoken to in years. Friends, old classmates, all asking the same thing. "Is it true?" I never replied. That was 3 weeks ago. I lost the job, lost the apartment, and last I heard, the story had spread far enough online that no place in town wants to hire me. I'm staying at a motel 2 counties over while I figure things out. I've tried contacting Evan. No response. Part of me wants to hate him, but honestly, I can't. Because after all these years, I finally understand something. He was right. I did ruin his life. And now, every single night when my phone buzzes from an unknown number with no message attached, I still wonder if he's finished with me, or if this is only the beginning. My name is Mason Carter, and until last fall, I drove nights for Ride Now, one of those app-based rideshare services that promises flexible income and conveniently forgets to mention the part where you spend half your life cleaning spilled beer out of your backseat. I was 26, fresh out of college with a communications degree that had turned out to be about as useless as a screen door on a submarine. After 8 months of unanswered job applications, awkward interviews, and rejection emails that all somehow said the same thing in slightly different wording, I gave up pretending I had a plan. So I drove. Mostly weekends, mostly late nights. That's when the money was best. Drunk people tipped better than sober people, probably because they forgot how much they'd already spent. I usually worked the downtown district in Lexington, Kentucky, ferrying college students between bars, apartment complexes, and occasionally all-night diners. The job wasn't glamorous, but it paid enough to help with bills while I figured out what came next. And honestly, I didn't mind it. Most nights were uneventful. Loud passengers, bad karaoke attempts, arguments between couples that probably should have broken up months earlier. Nothing particularly memorable. Then came October 22nd. That night changed everything. It was a Saturday and downtown was chaos. Home football game, packed bars, every street crawling with people. By midnight, surge pricing had kicked in hard and my phone was lighting up nonstop. I'd already done 8 rides and was planning to log off after one more. At 4:43 a.m., a request came through. Pickup, downtown near Main Street. Drop off, Ashford Ridge. I almost declined it. Ashford Ridge was deep rural county land, nearly 45 minutes outside the city. No streetlights, sparse cell reception, miles of winding back roads and farmland. Basically the kind of place where your GPS starts questioning its own life choices. But the fare was huge, triple surge, enough money to make the drive worth it. So I accepted. The passenger was a young woman, maybe 22 or 23, blonde hair, leather jacket, completely sober looking, which was unusual for that hour. She slid into the backseat and gave me a polite smile. "Thanks for taking this one." "No problem." The ride was quiet. She spent most of it staring out the window, occasionally checking her phone. No weird conversation, no red flags. When we reached Ashford Ridge, she directed me to a large farmhouse sitting alone at the end of a gravel driveway. Lights were on inside, several cars parked out front, probably some kind of late-night gathering. She thanked me, tipped $20 through the app before she even got out, and disappeared inside. Easy money. I should have headed straight back. Instead, I made the mistake of stopping at a gas station a few miles down the road. Coffee, bathroom, quick stretch, nothing unusual. By the time I got back on the road, it was 2:37 a.m. The route home took me along Hollow Creek Road, a narrow 2-lane stretch cutting through dense woods and farmland before reconnecting with the main highway. I'd driven it before, never liked it. At night, it felt isolated in a way that was hard to explain. No houses, no businesses, no lights except your own headlights slicing through endless trees. About 15 minutes into the drive, I saw hazard lights flashing ahead. A car sat diagonally across the right lane. Its trunk was open. 2 figures stood beside it, waving their arms. I slowed instinctively. As I got closer, I saw it was a middle-aged couple. The woman wore a long gray coat. The man had a baseball cap and work boots. Both looked frantic. Everything about the situation screamed caution. Every rideshare safety video I had ever watched basically flashed through my mind at once. Don't stop for roadside strangers. Keep moving. Call authorities. But something about them looked ordinary, not threatening, just distressed. I stopped about 20 feet away and cracked my window 2 inches. The woman hurried towards my car. "Oh, thank God," she said. Her voice trembled. "There's been an accident ahead." "What kind of accident?" "Bridge collapse." That got my attention. "There's an old wooden bridge about 2 miles up. Part of it gave way tonight. We barely avoided going over." The man stepped closer. "You need to turn around or take the detour." "What detour?" He pointed towards the tree line on my left. "There's an access road half a mile back. Dirt path through the woods. It loops around and connects to County Route 18. Something felt off immediately. The explanation was too rehearsed, too smooth, like they'd practiced it. Still, if they were telling the truth and I ignored them, that could end badly. "Why not just block the road closer to the bridge?" I asked. The woman hesitated, just for half a second, then said, "Our phones are dead. We were trying to stop drivers before someone gets hurt." I studied them. Neither looked injured, their car seemed perfectly fine, and despite their supposed panic, there was something strangely controlled about both of them. The man kept glancing at my back seat. The woman's eyes darted repeatedly to my phone mounted on the dashboard. That was enough for me. "Thanks," I said. "I'll figure it out." I rolled up the window and drove off. In my rearview mirror, I watched them standing motionless in the road. Neither moved, neither waved. They just stared. A mile later, I found the dirt turnoff they'd mentioned. It was barely visible, marked only by 2 leaning fence posts and a narrow trail disappearing into blackness. Even in my headlights, it looked wrong. Too overgrown, too narrow, like it hadn't been used in years. I kept driving, and less than 3 minutes later, I reached the bridge. Completely intact. No damage, no collapse, nothing. I crossed it without issue. That should have been the end of it, just a weird encounter with strange people. But something about it lodged itself in my mind. The lie, the rehearsed delivery, that dirt road, and most of all, the way they'd watched me leave, like they were disappointed. I barely slept when I got home. The whole thing gnawed at me. By Monday afternoon, curiosity got the better of me. I know this was stupid. I've replayed that decision 100 times, but I drove back out there. Broad daylight, sunny skies, middle of the afternoon. Everything looked different, less threatening, almost ordinary. When I reached Hollow Creek Road, I slowed near the turnoff and immediately noticed something new. A sign had been nailed to one of the fence posts. Fresh wood, bright red lettering. It simply read, "Private property, no trespassing." I was certain it hadn't been there 2 nights earlier. I would have noticed. I pulled onto the shoulder and stared at the dirt path. In daylight, it looked even stranger. Deep tire ruts, broken branches, and what looked like fresh mud tracks leading inward. For several minutes, I sat there debating. Then I made another terrible decision. I got out. At first, everything was silent except wind rustling through the trees. I walked maybe 20 yards down the path, then 30, then 40, and that's when I heard it. A scream. A woman's scream, sharp, terrified, coming from somewhere deep in the woods ahead. I froze. Another scream followed, closer this time, and then a man shouting. Not words, just raw, furious yelling. Adrenaline hit like a truck. I turned and sprinted back to my car. The second I slammed the door and started the engine, movement caught my eye in the trees. A figure, standing just beyond the brush, watching me. I couldn't make out a face, only the outline of someone tall and motionless. Then another figure appeared beside it. Then a third. I threw the car into drive and sped away so fast my tires screeched against the pavement. I didn't stop until I reached the interstate. That was 5 days ago. I haven't gone back. I haven't told police, and I haven't worked a single night shift since. But yesterday, when I opened my rideshare app to consider driving again, I found a new rider request waiting in my notifications. No pickup location, no destination, just a message. "You should have taken the detour, Mason." I stared at the notification for so long that my phone screen dimmed. Then it went black. For a few seconds, I just sat there on the edge of my bed, hearing nothing except my own breathing and the faint hum of the ceiling fan above me. I tapped the screen again. The rideshare app reopened. The request was gone. No pending trip, no message, nothing in my history. I refreshed it 3 times. Still nothing. At first, I convinced myself I'd imagined it. Maybe exhaustion, maybe paranoia from spending the last 5 days obsessing over Hollow Creek Road. But deep down, I knew what I'd seen. The wording was too specific, too deliberate. You should have taken the detour, Mason. Whoever sent that knew my name, and they knew exactly what happened out there. I deleted the app that night. Didn't drive all weekend. Didn't leave my apartment unless absolutely necessary. I told myself I was just taking a break, resetting. But really, I was scared. By Monday afternoon, I'd almost convinced myself the whole thing was some elaborate prank. Maybe those people had somehow seen my rideshare profile. Maybe the app glitched. Maybe the figures in the woods had just been hunters or landowners. There were logical explanations. Not good ones, but enough to quiet the panic. Then my phone rang. Unknown number. I let it go to voicemail. A few seconds later, a voicemail notification appeared. No spoken message, just static. Except buried beneath it, faintly, I could hear something else. A woman screaming. The exact same scream I'd heard in the woods. I listened 3 times to make sure I wasn't imagining it. Same scream, same raw terror. At that point, I finally did what I should have done days earlier. I called the county sheriff's office. The deputy who answered sounded bored until I explained the message and the road encounter. Then his tone shifted. He asked me to come in and give a statement. An hour later, I was sitting across from Deputy Harlan Brooks, a heavy-set guy in his 50s with the kind of tired eyes that suggested he'd seen too much weirdness to be easily surprised. He listened without interrupting. When I finished, he leaned back in his chair and sighed. "You're not the first." That sentence hit me like ice water. "What do you mean?" He folded his hands. "For the last 8 months, we've had 6 reports involving Hollow Creek Road." I felt my stomach tighten. Reports of what? Drivers being flagged down late at night by a man and woman claiming there's some emergency ahead. Usually a collapsed bridge, sometimes flooding, sometimes a downed power line. I stared. What happened to the drivers? Most ignored them. Most? He hesitated. 2 followed the detour. My mouth dried. What happened to them? Their vehicles were found abandoned 3 days later. Every muscle in my body went rigid. Abandoned where? Deep off an access trail about 2 miles into state forest land. And the drivers? He didn't answer immediately. That silence told me enough. "We never found them," he said finally. A chill crawled up my spine. Why hasn't this road been shut down? We tried increasing patrols. He rubbed his jaw. But whoever's doing this vanishes whenever law enforcement gets near. We've never caught them. I showed him the voicemail. He listened, his expression darkened. Then he asked me a question I wasn't expecting. "When exactly did you hear the scream in the woods?" "Monday, around 3:30 p.m. He frowned. "That's impossible." "Why?" He turned his monitor towards me. It displayed weather radar data. Monday afternoon, heavy thunderstorm warnings. Visibility in that area was near 0 from rain between 2 and 5 p.m. I stared at the screen. That can't be right. It's right. I remembered bright sun, clear skies, dry pavement, no storm. Seeing my confusion, Brooks stood. "Come with me." He led me to an evidence room. From a file cabinet, he pulled a printed aerial map of Hollow Creek Road. Then he pointed to the dirt path. There is no access road. I blinked. What? He tapped the map again. That trail was permanently collapsed by landslide 11 years ago. I stared harder. The area where I'd walked, where I'd heard the scream, where I'd seen those figures, was marked as dense, impossible ravine. No road, no path. No way my car could have even pulled over where I remembered parking. "That's impossible," I whispered. Brooks looked grim. "Unless you weren't where you thought you were." I left the sheriff's office more unsettled than when I arrived. That night, I barely slept. Around 2:17 a.m., my phone buzzed. Another unknown number. This time it was a text. A photo. I opened it and nearly dropped my phone. It was my car, parked at the edge of Hollow Creek Road, taken from several yards behind, partially obscured by trees. The timestamp was from 30 seconds ago. Beneath it, "Come finish the route." I bolted to my apartment window. My car was gone. For a moment, my brain refused to process what I was seeing. Then pure panic kicked in. I ran downstairs barefoot. The parking lot was empty. My Honda was gone. Keys still sitting on my kitchen counter upstairs. I called 911. Deputies arrived within minutes. While taking my statement, another call came over their radio. A vehicle had been located abandoned near Hollow Creek Road. Mine. Deputy Brooks himself drove me there. The road was blocked off with cruisers and floodlights. My car sat angled near the tree line, driver's side door hanging open, engine still warm. I'd never been more certain in my life. I had not driven it there. Brooks walked me to the edge of the woods, the same place I remembered parking. But in the harsh floodlights, I saw the truth. No dirt path, no tire ruts, no entrance. Just a steep drop into a rocky ravine choked with dead trees. I felt dizzy. Then from somewhere below us, a scream. The exact same scream. High, sharp, human. Everyone froze. Deputies swept the ravine immediately. Nothing. No person, no footprints, no source. Just darkness. That was 3 weeks ago. The sheriff's department impounded my car for investigation. They found mud cacked on the tires from terrain no vehicle should have been able to cross. And in my backseat, they found something else. A woman's silver bracelet. Old-fashioned, tarnished. Inside was an engraved date. October 14th, 1997. Deputy Brooks later told me that date matched the disappearance of Rachel Donnelly, the first person ever reported missing near Hollow Creek Road. She vanished 29 years ago after taking a detour offered by strangers. Her body was never found. Neither were 6 others after her. I don't drive nights anymore. Hell, I barely drive at all. But every now and then, usually around 2 a.m., my rideshare app somehow reinstalls itself on my phone. And every single time, there's one pending request waiting. Pickup location, Hollow Creek Road. Destination, unknown. Passenger note, the bridge is out, please hurry.